All right, all right, all right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, brothers and sisters all over the world. Kakas and dadas and kakas all over the world. Habari za Sabui, Habari za Mchana, Habari za Jioni, brothers and sisters all over the world. The name of this channel is The African Times, and I'm Thomas. All right. Welcome back. Just to let some of you know who may be new to the channel, when you hear me say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, I'm saying the same thing in Swahili when I say habari za asubuhi, habari za mchana, habari za jioni, brothers and sisters all over the world. Swahili is a language spoken in many parts of the Africa. Some even say that it's such a common language among the different nations of Africa that perhaps it should be the continental language. But nevertheless, all right, I'm back. I just wanted to let you guys know I'm talking to each and every one of you all over the world. So if you are getting this message at whatever time of the day you receive it, welcome to the African Times. All right, so let's kind of get into it. I talked to you guys a little bit ago. I put out a video that talked about the disrespect shown to African leaders who had traveled to the United States for a U.S.-Africa summit. It's the second summit put together by the United States where they brought in African leaders supposedly for the benefit of both parties, both the United States and the various countries in Africa. And the first one I think was done back in 2008 when President Obama, Mr. Obama, was over the government of the West, the W's, people that don't look like me and you. And so it's interesting. You know, they brought him in there, you know, first African-American president. Remember that? You know, having Kenyan ancestry, and then he, you know, all of that. Remember that? Yeah. So how coincidental is it that he's the first one to do the summit where they come to the United States and, you know, we're going to talk about our partnership. This is what they professed, that they're going to talk about the partnership between the U.S. and Africa for economic development and good things on both and all that. That's what they say. Well, this time, just about, 3-4 days ago, they brought the people back out, and people being the presidents of the various countries in Africa. And they arrived in the United States, and I did a video and I showed you a clip where Secretary of State Blinken, in my view, disrespected our good brother. He was the president of Angola. Disrespected him. Now, I know I'm the kind of brother that I am, so I pay attention to these things. And some people may say, well, you know, you went overboard. You made a big thing out of nothing. He was just kind of only telling the press that they could go. Well, he's not on the same level. Blinken, Secretary of State's not on the same level as the president of a country. So he didn't have any. It was inappropriate, put it nicely, for him to address that head of state in that way. And I just pointed that out. And I also pointed out that usually when you have a meeting such as that, it's not happenstance. It just happens and we just gonna let it go, and whatever we talk about, we're gonna freestyle it. No, it's planned out. It's thought about. It's organized. Now, in that recent video, and you go back and you look at it, but in that video, I showed you they had the press there. He greeted them in front of the press, so it was all prearranged. And they even talked about the development of some business. And so when the president started to talk about it, Blinken cut him off. inappropriate. Inappropriate. There's no other way to look at it. So I know that that's just me. So as I was continuing to, look up information about the summit, see how it goes. Which the summit really, it wasn't as beneficial. Excuse me. It wasn't as beneficial to our brothers and sisters from the motherland, the African continent. It wasn't as beneficial as the United States makes it out to be, and we have to be careful that they're just not doing this at a particular time when other nations are courting business cooperation with Africa. So, since I'm just me, I'm just me, I happened to run across a former UN ambassador. Some of you may know her. And she posed her thoughts about the meeting, the U.S. Africa Summit meeting. She posed her thoughts, and well, I tell you what, I'm just going to let you listen to some of her thoughts. So hold on, let me get the video on for you. Hold on one second. Be right back.
Today we're talking with Arikana Chihombori Kwao, the former ambassador of the African Union to the United States. She's also the founder of the Africa Diaspora Development Initiative, which aims to link Africans abroad back to the continent.
The United States, let me start by saying, it still remains the most preferred trading partner for the African nations. I think for the United States, and I'll repeat it, and I used to repeat it all the time during my tenure, what really is behind the failure of effective engagement with Africa is the disrespect of the Africans. That's where the problem begins. If we cannot accept, if the United States cannot accept Africans as equal partners, if the United States, for example, let's look at this particular meeting, this particular summit. There was no defined agenda. There has never been defined agendas whenever they meet with African countries as individual countries. It's always the United States setting the agenda, the United States setting the policies, and the United States telling the Africans about the policies. That is no way to have any meaningful engagement. If you take, for example, the fourth pocket meeting that was held between China and the African heads of state, way in advance, the issues were clearly defined. The agenda was going to focus on trade, it was going to focus on aid, it was going to focus on investments. The African heads of states were engaged in the discussion, in the planning. The outcomes were clearly defined with a way forward in terms of follow-up. It was a fruitful meeting that addressed the issues that needed to be addressed between not only African countries individually with China, but also Africans collectively with China. There is no published agenda. There are no issues that have been presented to the African heads of states. Africans have not been asked to engage in terms of creating the agenda and making sure that when the African heads of states come to Washington, the outcomes, the issues to be discussed are going to be meaningful outcomes with follow-up and deliverables that are going to be beneficial to both. It remains a one-sided conversation with the United States telling the Africans the agendas and the policies. The Africans are not on the table to discuss issues pertaining to us, wherein lies the problem, and the reason that continues to be the case. What underscores that is the disrespect for the Africans. I repeated it, I complained about it repeatedly. It is a serious problem. The United States must understand that Africans are not going to take it anymore. If you don't treat the Africans fairly, the United States is going to see itself slowly losing ground to China, to Russia, to all other nations, because without respecting the Africans, without treating the Africans as equal, without understanding that exploitation and abuse of Africa simply cannot continue, this meeting, this summit, is going to be yet another gathering. No outcomes, no deliverables until the next summit. I'm sorry, but the disrespect of the Africans is at the bottom of it all. Agenda for this meeting should have been set out in advance. Africans should have been involved. Without the involvement of Africans in these discussions, this is a useless. I'm sorry, but that is the fact.
No, I
Okay. All right. You got a chance to hear our good sister lay it out, and she laid it out. You heard her. She was basically saying that this disrespect has been going on. This is not new. And as I was explaining to you earlier, when you have these meetings are organized. Agendas are set. People know what they're getting into. They know what they're going to talk about. And if you're going to have a situation where you have the press there and you're talking in front of the press, it's already prearranged what you're going to talk about, what things you're not going to talk about, what things will be made public at this time, what things will not be made public, or what things will be made public at a later date. All of these things are arranged. So to have a situation where Blinken and the brother, Secretary of Defense, I think his name is Lloyd Austin, I'll check that out for you, to have this happen there, So, so they clearly, you have to say, well, if this is normally done, and you know she pointed out that the Africans, when they met with China, even the United States, when they meet with China or other countries, they lay it all out. They don't have any accidents like that. They don't do that. And here's the thing: even if they did, the government would not release the footage of that kind of mistake for the world to see, because they would not want to take the risk of disrespecting the other head of state. But in the case of Africans, that was the disrespect, and this sister is pointing it out. And then the other thing she mentioned is that, well, you come here, they don't give you an agenda, it's just going to be what it's going to be. We're going to talk to you. We're going to tell you, we talk at you. We tell you, you don't have no input, you just, like we're here for your beck and call. But she told you that day is over. See, you have to have courage. And she has courage. She's no longer ambassador to the UN. She's not that. They can't afford to have someone who is strong and courageous and telling the truth. They don't do well with that. So anyway, but she goes on. So let me let you get some more of her thoughts. All right, hold on.
Grateful for your candor, and it sounds to be, I mean, I think there was a lot of criticism of the last summit like this under President Obama, that there was like no follow through. And you know, it's one of the big questions I'm asking is, how do you make a big bang summit where everyone comes over? It's like checking off the box and say, okay, we've done Africa, now we can move on to other things. How do you make that something that's a more sustainable and a more continuous engagement of the United States with Africa? And what I'm hearing from you is frankly a lot of disappointment and a lot of pessimism about what may come out of this summit.
Well, the point of the matter is already nothing is going to come out of it because it is a one-sided conversation.
Right.
Where is the agenda? The agenda should have been published way in advance. The African leaders should have been given an opportunity to also state their position so they can come up with an African position that can then be discussed alongside the American position. So the fact that it is a one-sided conversation, that is yet going to be another useless meeting with no outcomes. But again, I'm going to keep emphasizing, the reason this is happening is because there is a disrespect for the Africans. There is a general feeling that we don't need to hear from the Africans. Their opinions do not matter. That wherein lies the problem. Why were the Africans not consulted? Why were the Africans not part of an agenda? Why was there not even an agenda like what happened during the FOCAC meeting with China? Those are some basic issues. No head of state. President Biden would not pick up and go to meet with any other leader in the world without an agenda. That simply doesn't happen.
Right.
So what makes the US think that they can engage African leaders without an agenda? Come to Washington, let me tell you what I want to do for you. Come to Washington, let me tell you what you need to do in your country. And that game is an old game.
Right.
It's not going to work anymore. To be honest with you, if I'm to speak the truth, I hope a lot of heads of states don't come. because it is an insult. It is an abuse of the African leaders. It's a disrespect of the African leaders. Where is the agenda? Please respect the African leaders. Do unto them what you would want done unto you.
All right. Huh? It's really not too much more that can be said about that point. The disrespect is clear. Here's a lady who she's eloquently and clearly stating it. Here's a lady who deals with these issues and these people on that international level, at the top echelon of people interacting in the world. And she clearly states it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful. And there is no excuse for it. There's no justification for it. There's no way you can fix it up and try to, propagandize and make it seem right. No. And you know what I like is what she said, and this is my position, which you're going to hear more about it, because she's talking about on a macro level for all of the, and what I mean when I say macro level, I mean all of the continent of Africa, all of the heads of state. She alluded to the fact that she wishes you wouldn't even come, that you wouldn't even show up to these meetings. Don't let these people call you and tell you, okay, come here. Now, there are a couple, I think there are like 54 countries in Africa. I think 5 of them didn't come. 4 or 5, I can't remember the exact number, but the whole point is some of them didn't come. Now, I know for certain, as I mentioned in the other video, Zimbabwe, they didn't come. They were being sanctioned. But here's her point, and here's my point. She said she hoped they didn't come. Now, for me, you shouldn't be going. You don't need to. We are moving to this point where there's an understanding between African nations. You will hear people talk about a global economy. Remember, I'm always talking to you about economics. And this has an economic impact. The purpose of this meeting was to come and engage in each other with a variety of issues, but primarily economic. Okay? But when you have 1.4 billion people in your continent, which is one Africa, we have to get past all that foolishness. She's going to talk a little bit about that coming up. I'm going to let you hear it. I think it's in this video. If not, I'm telling you. We have to have one Africa. There's one people. You gonna let these people tell you and split you up and divide you and do all of that? It's one people. A quick example. I'm here. I'm in Tanzania. I'm in the Bajaji driving. Or I'm walking down the street. Somebody will come up to me and they'll start talking to me in Swahili. And now listen carefully. They just start talking to me in Swahili. Because they cannot look at me and tell that I'm not from here. We're one people. So they start talking to me in Swahili. And then I have to let them know, samahani kaka, mimi Swahili kidogo, kidogo, mimi Americani, pole brother, pole. Okay? Now I'm just telling him, hey, I'm sorry, I don't speak Swahili. My Swahili is very little. I know very little. I'm from America. And then I can clearly see the attitude on his face, the whole thing. I can clearly see, then they take a different approach to me. As if like, oh, now I'm some kind of alien. But clearly they couldn't tell because we're the same people. Okay, so getting back to it. She said she wished they wouldn't come. Because these people, these W's, and particularly the United States, very arrogant. These people have no respect for anyone but, I was going to say but themselves, but they don't even respect themselves. Remember, World War II, World War I, all of these other wars, these people have killed hundreds of millions of themselves for power, for greed. Listen, just show you, I've been a very deep thinking person for all of my life. Okay, I was probably 16, 17, maybe even younger, and I remember telling somebody, no government that's in power, and particularly one that rules the world, will ever do anything to remove themselves from power. They want to remain in power forever. And this is what you have here with this empire of the W's, the West, the United States. So the point is, as she mentioned, and I agree, you should not be dealing with these people. You got 1.4 million people here. You have your own internal market. It's enough to sustain you with a powerful economy. Now, I think it was in this last clip, and either the one before or the one I'm going to play, you have other partners, other people that you can engage with that treat you with respect. China, Russia, whoever, any group. It doesn't have to be China or Russia. It could be any group that deals with you respectfully, then you interact with them. But you also have your own internal market. And here's why this is important. You have to understand this. China did essentially what is happening to Africa. China, 50 years or so ago, they weren't this dominant power, okay? They had been colonized too by the British, okay? And they had to fight their way through this, and they went through a series of events and whatnot. But America, the capitalists, the West, the W's, their market is only, and market only means people, a number of people. That's all it is. Don't get it confused. They make it all spooky and it's like complex. No, it just means a bunch of people. It's 300 and some million people, 370 million people, okay, maybe 350 million, whatever. 350 million people, they can only sell you so many candy bars and so many soda pops and so many, cars and refrigerators. Then at a certain point, because they overproduce, because they're greedy, now they got to start looking for another place to sell these products. Then, because they're capitalists, and capitalist means just at its basic, I want to produce something, and I want to produce more than what I need so that I have enough to sell to other people. And in exchange for the product, the people are going to give me money. And so if I keep my costs low, expenses low, then I have a greater profit. And so when you talk about market, remember, market is only people. You have what? A labor market. In other words, a group of people who will do the labor to produce the product that you need so that you can sell it. Now, I just told you, if you done sold it all and stuff, and you done made a bunch of it, and you done sold it to all the people in the United States, then you need another market, another consumer market. Now, that's what they did, and they had a market over in China, both a labor market and a consumer market. So they went over there and they made a deal with the people. Okay, look, and China's smart. They're smart people. They said, okay, if you want to come over here and you want to sell your products over here, you could do that, but you got some conditions. You want to come over here, you want to use our labor force, okay, you can do that, but you got some conditions. And the conditions were, you're going to share your technology. You're just not going to come over here and use our people and keep all the secrets and you benefit. No, you're not going to do that. You're going to share that technology. We're going to get some of that. And you're going to allow us to what? Put some products back in your market, in there with your people. So you got import, export, exchange of goods and services between two nations. Walmart is not Walmart without China. Walmart filled its stores with Chinese products, built, manufactured in China. And many of them, they weren't built by Chinese companies by themselves. They were companies, some partnered with American companies, American entrepreneurs, American capitalists to build, but they needed what? Distribution. They needed a place to get rid of the products. So they agreed to work together. Now, as a result, China rose economically because they had two markets, two substantial markets. One huge market in the United States, a big group of people who were already working and got money and buying stuff. And then they had the Chinese market, which was a developing market, but a huge market because 1.3 billion people, like Africa. All right, and this is very important to understand because what you hear happening, what she's talking about, That day is over. The African people are waking up all over the world, just like in the United States. They're waking up like I'm woke. You woke. You watching me because you woke. The market, the economy is developing in Africa. They just don't tell you. They don't tell you, and they're doing everything they can to slow it down, prevent it from developing until they can take control of it and then develop it so that it's beneficial for them. Just like slavery, slave trade, economically. They didn't only take your unskilled labor to work in the field and the whole. No, they took your scientists, your doctors, your lawyers, your economists, they took your inventors. They took all of your history, things that you've developed. They took it all and then used it for their benefit and then told you didn't do anything. You had no contribution to the world. This is what they're doing. So she's explaining all of that. I need you to understand this is very important because we're at the cusp, like she said, that day of us just being disrespected. That is over. That's over. All right, so I think she got a couple more things. I'm going to let you hear that, and then I'll be right back.
Relationship from your perspective.
Let me just hit the nail in the head and deal with the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room.
Yeah.
Racism as well plays a very important part. The disrespect of the Africans also goes back to a lot of the people who work in the U.S. government. Not all of them, but there's a significant of them who automatically assume that Africans do not know what they're doing. Africans need help. Africans need to be told what to do. And racism is also at the bottom of it all. We need to address the individuals who are going to be visiting Africa, engaging Africa. They must understand that Africans are equal to them. But when one goes to Africa with a sense of superiority, wherein lies the problem, because you are not going to engage those leaders who are going to come to the table as equals. You go in feeling superior, you come back feeling superior. That is not an issue with the Chinese. The Chinese are coming in. The Chinese, yes, if you don't negotiate with them and they win the game, then that's your fault. But they don't come in feeling superior. They understand that Africa has something they need. So they will come to the Africans. They will come and make sure that they let the Africans know that you matter to us, that our relationship with you does matter. That you don't get that feeling with the United States. You get the feeling that there's this sense of superiority, that you Africans, you ought to be glad that we are engaging you. You ought to be glad that we are inviting you to come to Washington. That sense of superiority, it has to change. Whether it calls for the United States to retrain their people as they engage Africa, but it is that which really goes to the bottom of why the engagements are not going to be as effective. They must take a page out of what Africa is doing. Let me say this. Chinese people didn't used to be that way, but they quickly changed their strategy. When they realized that the game they were playing was not going to work in Africa, they changed their strategy. And that's during my tenure. I'll continue to say it again. If this was a basketball game, the United States need to call for timeout. This is a new game, and it requires new rules of engagement. The United States must, first and foremost, make sure that racism is out of the picture. Africans are just as smart as anybody else. Africans are equal, and until we engage as equals, all these meetings, all these conversations are always going to be useless. And it goes back to the individuals who are going to be at the table with the Africans. So the US also need to address the issue of racism and make sure that the people engaged in Africa, their minds are clear and they accept that Africans are equal.
Tell us about...
All right. Yeah, well, you got a chance to hear her talk about it a little more. And she just got to the point of what it is. Just racism. The W's. The people who don't look like me and you. That arrogance is a result of their ideology, their ideas and concepts about themselves, that they're superior to others, and the American concept, shining hill or house on the hill or whatever they want to call it. But it's simply individuals who bought into that philosophy and that ideology. They're breeding those people that way. And those people have been doing that kind of thing for hundreds of years, thousands of years. It reminds me of a story. Now, you see how they brought the brother there, and she pointed it out. They brought the brother, the president of Angola, there, and he's there, and they were aware of what they were going to talk about, but right there in front of the press, and then release it publicly, disrespected the brother publicly. Now, I'm going to give you an example that this is never going to change, which is why she says sometimes you just shouldn't even go. You shouldn't even deal with these people. There's a story, and it's not a story, it's real life, but I'm telling you, people talk about it because it's the story of something that happened in the past. There was a queen, I think her name was Queen Nzinga, African queen. And forgive me, I can't remember so much. Much of this stuff I researched a long time ago, but the point is the same. Just understand the point of the thing. There was an African queen, and they were at war with the W's. It's been happening for thousands of years. These people were, enslaving us, stealing us, taking our area, and they come in telling you we're missionary, we're here to help you, we all got the same God, we all love each other, it's all one people. They're lying. They're flat out lying. So anyway, she was leading the resistance against this group. I don't know. I think it was Portugal, but I'm not sure. So don't make too much of it. Just remember the point of it. Anyway, this queen and her army, they were putting the work in. They were defeating these people. So how the people are, the W's. We're losing. Before we lose, let's call a meeting. Like a summit. But this is hundreds of years ago. So they say they're going to meet, and they call her to come to the country so they can talk, and maybe they can work out something where, we can stop the fighting. And this is not a noble gesture on their part. And I'm sure when she went just because it's her people. And they, look, if we can stop this war, you leave us alone. All right, cool, because you can't beat us, but you leave us alone. And we're going to leave you alone, and we go, and me and my people can live in peace. So she goes. Now, the place where she was going, some W land, Europe, or someplace over there, and the king, he knows she's coming, so him and all his court and all his people, their government, they remove all the chairs, so that when she gets there for the meeting, they're all sitting up, kind of like up above her on a little plateau or whatever, and she has no chair to sit, and they're going to have this meeting. She's going to have to stand up before them. So, brothers and sisters, we're smart people. We assess the situation quickly. So a couple of her guards, they assessed it quickly, and they jumped down on the floor and put themselves in a position so that she could have a place to sit on their backs. And then the way the story goes, brothers were watering at the mouth to get the opportunity to sit down and be the chair for the queen to sit on. They're not going to let these W people disrespect her like that. And that was not an accident. It just didn't happen. Oh, we forgot to have chairs. No, it was planned out. It was planned out. It was organized that way. Psychological warfare. Me and the wife, we talk about it. They're outthinking us in many cases. Because we're just a peaceful people. For the most part, we just want to live and have fun and live our lives. But that's not the environment that we're in now. It's just not. And so they did that, and those guards, those men, they provided a place for her to sit. And so the W's, they couldn't get over on her in that moment at that time. And this is what our good brother in Angola, did. Because he clearly was reading from a prepared speech. So they knew, but they wanted to be disrespectful. All right. So you heard her talk about it, and at the end of it, it's just racism, white supremacy. And so anybody that we deal with, when they send them or we go and we notice and we recognize that this is the type of individual that we're dealing with, it needs to stop right then. Just get up, walk out. Hey, all right, thanks, appreciate it. See you later. Much later. Later like never. I heard this one guy say, I'll see you. There's a slim chance that we're going to see each other again. And Slim left town. So anyway, yeah, so she's got She got one more thing she talks about, and I think I'm including it, and I'm sorry that it's getting kind of lengthy, but I really want you to understand the breadth of what she's talking about, because it's at the point where we are now, all over the world. People that look like me and you are waking up, and it's not only us; the other people who have been subjected to capitalism and the West domination and outlook and philosophy. You know, New World Order. Now they change it. They always change, make it some kind of fancy thing, make it sound better. Once you catch on that the New World Order is not good, not rules-based society. Okay, so she talks a little bit about that, because remember, we all know, African people, us, people that look like me and you, we all know, and we talk about it, that we have to be unified. We have to come together. And for me, it's not just not unity together. We're a unit. It's a bunch of black people on the planet. We're a unit. The issue is being unified in action with measurable goals. So she talks a little bit about that, because if you don't know, we have been at war with these people for thousands of years. And they've been very effective in their ability to brainwash us through elaborate propaganda. Just like now, I told you in the previous video, duality. There's a duality that exists. It's their rhetoric, what they say, even symbolism and images, the things that they promote and produce, that say we are one, it's a melting pot, we're all together, we love each other, we're for democracy and human rights and all of that. But then when you examine it closely, practically, the reality is that it's the opposite of that. They consider themselves and their group to be superior and privileged, and everyone else is subject to them. And even if you had if you were a subject, you could be a good king, you could be a good queen, you could be a good pharaoh, you could be a good leader, and look out for the people. You could represent the people well, and they just choose not to do that. So she touches a little bit in this next clip. She touches a little bit on that, and she talks about our evolution as a people. You know, people that look like me and you, how we've been divided, and not totally of our own merit. And we can talk a little bit more about that in another video. Internally, you know, we had our issues, and we still have them. Are we one people? Are you this? Are you that? Are you Christian? You Baptist? You Protestant? You all this foolishness that's going to just keep us divided. But even that is evolving to the end that we need, which is unity among 1.4 billion people on the motherland continent, and all of the hundreds of millions spread out throughout the diaspora. So we are evolving to that point, and these people see that. They know that. They have to stop that. And they're going to do everything in their power to prevent it. Even to be so tricky as to place people in front of us who look like us, look like you and me, but who are acting like one of them. And telling us that, no, you just have to understand what they're saying. They're good people. It's just a few bad people, but they're good. That's the same propaganda they've been spreading from the beginning. It's how they got into us, into our land through all of that. So I told you, the brother Secretary of State. Doesn't he sound like Colin Powell? I want y'all to go back and look up some Colin Powell videos and listen to Colin Powell. They sound alike. You know, they got that sound, when it sound, if you're not careful, if you're not looking, you think you listen to a white man with little black flavor. But they place these individuals in front of us who look like us, so that we'll lower our defenses, and then we'll listen and be more acceptive and more receptive to the things that they say. Like I told you, this first summit they had of President Obama. And then remember when they invaded Iraq? Was it Iraq? I think it was Iraq. Colin Powell, you remember he had the little vial, just this much right here, this much right here, and weapons of mass destruction. They got this much chemical weapons, you just this much to destroy the whole world. They had nothing, but they sent the brother to do it. You see now, talking about attacking these different people and all Russia. Now they got another brother. Then they spoke first as lady and sister. And then when COVID jumped off, brother. But those people have no power. And don't get that confused, because they don't. They just work for those people, and they'll do whatever those people tell them. They won't be loyal to your cause or my cause or things that help us. And we're going to talk more about that, because it's not only us. I told you, they don't even care about themselves. So anyway, the sister's getting ready to talk just a little bit more about it, how we've evolved, and we're getting closer and closer to an understanding, a solid understanding that our power, our future, our prosperity, and our posterity, the success of our posterity, lies in our ability to be able to unify, to come together, and to understand that survival is dependent upon our being able to come together and stay together and act as a group on the world stage. So let her tell you a little bit more about it. All right, I'll be right back.
Absolutely. I have to say, if you were to go back to 1963, when our Pan-African fathers came together in the hopes of creating an Africa that spoke with one voice, an Africa that had one military, an Africa that had one central bank, one monetary fund, one stock exchange, and an Africa with one customs union. We failed at that over the years, but finally, 2 years ago, they approved the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is a policy that saw Africa coming together in one particular area, that we are now speaking with one voice when it comes to trade. Yes, its implementation is a monster. Yes, its implementation is work in progress. But you can say, of the issues that our Pan-African fathers met to discuss in 1963, finally, over 50 years later, we are able to accomplish the first one, which is being an Africa that's going to the world as one customs union. The spirit of Pan-Africanism, it has taken us a long time to really begin to come together, to dismantle the Berlin Conference, which, of course, for those who think, oh, Berlin Conference is a thing of the past, think again. As long as we have a country called Togo, as long as we have a country called Congo Brazzaville, Eswatini, Malawi, those small countries, even Nigeria or the big ones, Kenya, Egypt, Morocco, they cannot survive on their own. As long as we're talking about the little bitty individual African countries, we are never going to realize the dream of a united Africa that speaks with one voice. And until we dismantle some of those borders, until we begin to wake ourselves up as a people, until we begin to realize that the colonizers and the rule of divide and conquer left us feeling inferior. Supremacy, white supremacy was introduced from the very onset. When the colonizers came to Africa, we were taught to believe that everything African was bad, everything European was better. And we still continue to suffer from that mentality. So yes, while we demand that the West and those who don't look like us Africans treat us equally, realize that we are human beings just like they are, we too, as Africans, we have a lot of work to do on a personal level, where we must also believe, truly believe, that we are equal to everybody else on earth, and that we are capable. That also is a disease that we need to realize as Africans. Let's wake up and realize that white people are not superior to us. Chinese are not superior to us. We are just as good as anybody else. That is a serious challenge, because we still have people, even when you look at issues that we could stand up as a people and push back. You see ministers from the Western world going to Africa, and they basically can. I've seen them say some of the most ridiculous things to the Africans, and instead of the Africans pushing back and saying, "Hey, hold it, this is not going to fly," instead the Africans are afraid, just inherently fear of the white person, without any, for no good reason whatsoever, except that we have been programmed to feel inferior. So on an individual basis, we continue to speak the gospel of truth. We continue to shed the light as to the brainwashing that the African has been put through, wherein lies the problem. When you look at what is being done at the World Bank, for example, the Bretton Woods institutions, the frivolous loans, countries that have never defaulted on their loan repayments, and yet they're still given large interest rates. Why? Countries like the United States that don't need any help, they get loans at zero interest rates. You look at the issue. I'm glad President Biden, I hear he's going to be talking about having the AU as the 51st member of the G20. Well, let's also take it to the next level. Let's go to the United Nations. Let's have Africa, 1.4 billion people. They need to come to the table. Let's African Union be the 6th member of the 5-member UN Security Council. You can't just totally disregard 1.4 billion people because you've gotten away with it for centuries. Well, guess what? Game is over. Africans are waking up. Africans are beginning to realize and understand the game that have been played. Unfortunately, we don't have that critical mass of people who are continuously going to speak truth to power. The good thing with the story of Africa is ours, we are coming from a position of righteousness, a position of truth, a position of facts. Those are constants. They don't change. Let's continue to give the world an overdose of our truth, but at the same time, while we are doing so and demanding a world that is fair, that is just, and free of racism, bigotry, and hate, we must also work on our own development and our own awakening as a people.
All right. You hear the sister dropping jewels, dropping dimes. She's breaking it down to you, and she's talking about something that's very important. The racism is just not racism by itself. The racism has at its foundation, its core, an economic basis. Yes, the racism is them as a group of whites, a group of W's, a group of Western people. That's what they call themselves, and they want to maintain that group to be in control. But be in control of what? Be in control of the economics of others. Because the economics is what provides the power. The economics is what allows you to be able to provide the mechanism necessary to build a military to maintain power and dominance. And so what she's pointing out to you is that the economic component of the nation, meaning your banking system, your finance system, she's saying we have that 1.4 billion people. So if you allow them to be in control of that through their institutions, IMF, International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, if you allow them to be in control of that financial system, and that financial system is in control of your market, your group of people, the 1.4 billion people, they're going to choke you to death. They're going to dominate you. And so she's saying that we don't need that. We started back in the 60s, and now we've gotten to a point where we understand that uniting together and putting our own institutions together, we have enough people to support that kind of economic activity, that kind of economic structure, where we can have our own World Bank, our own central bank, our own banking system, our own finance system, and then we can control the economy of our own people. And this is at the essence, it's at the core of what they're doing. They're fighting to maintain that dominance and control. They're fighting for it. They're never going to stop. All right, and then the other thing we have to be careful of is, and she alluded to it a little bit, the African Union. Many of you may or may not know, it's 54 countries, as I was telling you, that make up the continent of Africa. And the African Union is an organization that embodies all of those countries so that they can act as one block, one economic block, one financial block, and one military block. Think about something. The United States, as I told you, 350 million people, but you have to understand you got 1.4 billion people. You can get together, 3, 4, 5 million people, 6, 7, 8 million, you can get 10, 15 million. You can get that many people together in a military. You got 350 million. And remember, of that 350 million, 50 million are us. And when you create the conditions for the economy, and the economy is so tight where people who are looking for a job, and they can't find a job in the private sector, and then they turn to the military for employment. If that a large number of that military is people that look like you and me, the people in the West, in the United States, they got a problem. And they understand that. I'm not saying that they don't understand. They understand. Now, she also touched on courage for our people to stand up and say the things. It's not only waiting for a leader to do it. No, you do it. You tell people. I told you in the beginning 2 years ago. We, me, you, and the people that look like me and you, we have to have these economic conversations with each other. And we have to make these things the topics of our discussions. It has to be the dominant part. It doesn't have to be the only part, but it has to be the dominant part. It has to be something that is talked about so much to where it becomes a normal part of our culture. I'll give you an example. I found a video some time ago. It was a video produced by North Korea, and it was a video that talked about the American culture and how the American culture creates individuals. And in that video, they talked about how what kind of society exists that produces an individual like Michael Jackson. And they show, and that's just one aspect, not to pick on him. Michael Jackson was phenomenal, probably the best entertainer in the world ever, and particularly of his generation, he was the best. But the society was set up in such a way that he had issues with his physical appearance. He wanted to change himself. He did change himself from a brother that looked like you and me to that. Let me see. Can I get that in there? Can I get my finger up there? Yeah, that. See that up there? That white? That's what he did. He changed himself to that. And I don't know if he wanted to do it or if they forced him to do it. Maybe if he didn't like himself, I don't know. But at the end of his career, he said he looked in the mirror, he knows he's black. And then he had all these rumors about it being, some kind of disease or whatever. My whole point is that these people want to be in control of our society, and they use the economics to do it. And if they can do it, they can create other individuals who will act on their behalf to our detriment, the detriment of people that look like me and you. So she talked about that, and she said we're at a point at the end where now we're coming together, we understand it, and we have to wake up and we have to speak out about it. We have to speak out to let our people know, no, you don't have to be afraid of the people, what they're going to say, what they're going to do. Tell them proudly, I'm an African person. Is Africa poor? No, it's one of the richest, if not the richest continent on earth. No, we're not, inferior to anyone. No, we're just as smart. And I've told you before, this is very important to understand. We dominate in all of for the most part, the sporting activities or things like that. We dominate it. You let us in it, we're going to dominate it. Now, if you can run, jump, shoot a ball, hit a ball, whatever. If you can do those things, you can dance, you can move. Your limbs are controlled by your mind, your brain. And your brain has to perform a multitude of operations to control your body and to make your body perform. You shooting a basketball, you hitting a baseball, you hitting a golf ball, swinging a tennis racket, dancing, doing whatever you're doing. That's mathematical calculations, many of which your brain is performing instantaneously. So, no, we're superior. Superior thinking, superior analytical skills, critical thinking skills, critical analysis, scientists, mathematics. We're incredibly intelligent people. All right, so I think she has just this last segment. It was worth it. I enjoyed it. I hope you're enjoying it. It's just one last segment. So let her finish, and then we'll be right back.
Major initiatives.
Absolutely. The brain drain that started over 400 years ago, when the best and the brightest and the fittest were taken out of Africa forcibly And that is when the brain drain started. I want to make sure that is very clear. And when we talk about African diaspora, we're talking about all people of African descent living outside of Africa. Let's be very clear. African Americans, they are Africans who were forcibly taken out of Africa, plus the continued brain drain, those who are later immigrants who left Africa running away from famine, from wars, in search of greener pastures. The end result is, as we speak, Africa has a serious deficit of expertise. However, the good news for Africa is that we have a very young, intelligent, vibrant population that need opportunities. So when we can marry the age group of young, intelligent Africans with the expertise coming from the diaspora, we can see an Africa that can propel itself to take its rightful place on the world stage like it once was. So yes, the diaspora are an important component of Africa's development. Make no mistake about that. All the African leaders are fully aware of that. All the African leaders are in full support of coming up with programs to make it easier for the diaspora to move back. We want to look at diaspora who can come to Africa, not just focus on a country that you were born in, but if you are a person of African descent, Africa should matter to you. Africa should be your problem. You must own Africa's problems, understand it, and participate in the development of Africa. For when we have a stable Africa, it now also correlates with an African American who is anchored. It correlates with an Afro-Caribbean who is anchored. It correlates with an Afro-Latino who is anchored. Currently, descendants of the formerly enslaved, they are like a ship without an anchor. The wind blows that way, here they go. Until they are anchored by being accepted by Africa, until they are anchored by participating in the development of Africa. The Jews do it, the Chinese do it, the Indians do it, the Irish do it, African Americans, together with the continental Africans. We must make sure that we work together to participate in the development of Africa, because the development and the building of the Africa we want, it is our responsibility first and foremost, and ours alone. Others are welcome to come join us. Others are welcome to help us. Others are welcome to engage us as equal partners, but we must own the building of the Africa that we want as a united front of the African diaspora.
All right. Well done, sister. Well done. She put it in. She capped it off nicely. And again, the main point she's making is that, see, we're all together. You know, I came from a faraway place to come here, diaspora. We're all the same people, and we all come together. And when we come together, there's nothing that we can't do. We're all over this world. And many of us have the skills and talents to do all the things necessary in all areas of people activity for us to be successful. There's no question about it. She knows it. I know it. You know it. Now all we have to do is start working together and having these conversations. And they know it. And that's why they're working hard to prevent it. We're not going to let that happen. They talk about this century being the Chinese century. I don't know if they're saying it's even the Chinese millennia. You know, I'm sure the Chinese don't plan on going backwards. But as economies go, they grow, they develop. And now it's time for Africa's development. I got an interesting video. Interesting topic I just found out about. Things that I talked to you about a couple of years, that they're happening now. So again, you know, the brain drain she talked about, that has to stop. You go, you get education, just like Gaddafi said. They say, what I'm being told some time ago, is Gaddafi put together, Gaddafi, leader of Libya, before they killed him. He had put together a system to where, and this is what I'm told, so I'm not there, but the idea of it is what's important, because that idea could be implemented anywhere, particularly if you're in control of your own economics. You can put this program in place, unlike in America. And what I'm talking about is, in Libya, if you wanted to go to college, the schooling was free, the education was free, and you could study whatever you want. And if that country didn't have what you wanted to study, They would pay for you to go abroad and study it and find it. But you had to come back to the country, and you had to spend time taking the skill that you learned abroad. You had to take time in the country to use that skill to help the society in the country. That's what it's about. Not, oh, I got this great idea, so let me call IBM, let me call Microsoft, let me call Google, let me call Yahoo, let me call the good old W so I can give it to them because they're going to give me a lot of money. And then no, then you just go and you give them all your talent and your skill, and then they dominate you. They'll make you rich, give you a bunch of money, and dominate all your people and destroy them and oppress them so that you starve, oppress millions and billions of people that look like you and me, of children that look like you and me. So we have to stop that. I hope this video has been enjoyable for you. I hope it's been informative, educational, and look forward to more content. Thank you, sister, for sharing the information with us and remaining steadfast and strong in support of African unity among African people. Thank you very much for that. And as always, I love you all. Uhuru. Uhuru. Uhuru.